enables the bank's outstanding employees to focus on a much bigger picture. The second piece is how we work. And I think there are multiple parts, but the first part is to measure output, not input. And what do I mean by that? I think saying how many projects we finance or how many dollars we put in is interesting and important, but what is even more important is how many girls went to school because of the centers we built, or how many people got a better job which pays better because they were lucky enough to go to a skilling center that the bank had worked on with the local government, or how many greenhouse gas emissions we managed to avoid and then convert through a carbon market into the transfer of resources for that community as well as the government to benefit from, and so on. The output, not the input. Measuring that is very important. The second part that's very important is going to be how we work in partnership with others. My opinion, and the opinion of many of us, is that there is not enough money in the world of multilateral banks, of governments, or of philanthropy to solve the kind of issues we are discussing. If you believe in the estimates that people say that you need $1 trillion a year to be invested just in renewable energy, to turn the tide over the next coming decades, $1 trillion a year does not exist on our balance sheets or in philanthropy or in government. So we have to get the private sector in as well. We need all shoulders at the wheel. So to give you an example, a few days ago, we announced a partnership with the Inter-American Development Bank that we would work on 3 issues together in Latin America. The Amazon and all aspects of the Amazon. Reforestation, but importantly, looking after the communities in the Amazon. Second, dealing with the challenges of climate adaptation in the Caribbean, which is severely stressed by what is going on. And third, digitization and its benefits for governance and education in Latin America. Now, if Inter-American Development Bank and the World Bank get together, that's 2 shoulders at the wheel. And like that, we need to work with the Asian Development Bank, the African Development Bank, as well as, most importantly, with the private sector as well, to bring this money in. So there's a series of things we're trying to do in our approach to partnership, which we hope will bend the curve over the coming years. And then I'd say the last and not the least of this has to do with capital and the adequacy of capital. The G20 laid out a common framework, which we are working on to help look at the capital adequacy systems in the bank, whether it's equity to loan ratios, or it's the kind of things we can do with hybrid capital and portfolio guarantees and the funding of concessional capital for countries to be able to put to resource on the right problems. All those are part of what we are doing. We're going to look to our donor nations and philanthropies to now put their shoulder to the wheel to help us build up this capital buffer. But then once this is done, and we can say we are a better bank than we used to be, a good bank but an even better bank, at that time will be the time to discuss what should be our common appetite for a bigger bank in the future. And I think that's the staging of where we are with the evolution process. When you come to Marrakesh, which I know you will, hopefully you will see more of this being discussed with the governors there in October.
Thank you very much, Sajai. Now let me turn to you, Klaus. You mentioned about this Industrial 4.0. If I may raise my concern, my biggest concern is not about Industrial 4.0, but about Governance 4.0. Yeah, because I can imagine that the product cycle is getting shorter and shorter, and will be very difficult for the policymakers or the regulators to come up with the regulation, which is maybe your regulation will be obsolete in the next 6 months. Under this kind of situation, what we probably need is an agile bureaucracy, but agile bureaucracy is an oxymoron. So how, in your view, how do you see sort of like, the role of the governance here, especially for many ASEAN countries? Is there anything that they can particularly do related to address this issue?
If we look at public-private cooperation, I think we have to find very flexible ways to coordinate the efforts. I mean, governments still provide direction, but business provides the innovative power. And I would argue that long-term, with all the importance of capital, we move from the era of capitalism to the era of talentism, which means that the key competitive factor will become innovation and not anymore low cost or the availability of capital. Of course, they are necessary, but the decisive factor will be the innovative capacity and power of a country. And here, of course, ASEAN has a great privilege. It has a useful entrepreneurial it has a young generation. And I have met here so many young entrepreneurs. I'm very impressed. But I would add one other thing. I think we move not only from capitalism to talentism in some way, but even more important, we move from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. And I'm very proud to see how the business community has embraced this concept, which is now very much contested in certain other parts of the world. Business is not only here to create prosperity. I think business has also a social role, which means to serve society and to take care of the environment. So we have to build this notion of stakeholder capitalism into all of our activities as business leaders. And let me make a last comment here. The future, and I repeat what has been said several times, will be decided by the flexibility and adaptability of economies. And here, the more diverse an economy is organized, the less it is, the more it is, let's say, suitable to sustain shocks.
Thank you very much, Pak Klaus. Now let me turn to you, Pak Watanabe. As the Indo-Pacific is projected to be the largest global growth contributor for the next 30 years, how can ASEAN sustain this upward trajectory and increase its economic significance?
Thank you very much. Let me highlight two obvious challenges ahead: digital transformation and sustainability. On digital, the launching of ASEAN initiative of Digital Economy Framework Agreement is very timely to set a regional framework on governance of digital technologies, cyber security, and citizen relationship with emerging technologies. This is very timely and appropriate initiative. On sustainability, this region is continued to grow. It's quite different from other regions. So we need to sustain growth while addressing affordable energy transition toward net zero. That's a huge challenge. And the area is here to design a practical and affordable pathway to achieving the net zero by facilitating realistic energy transitions and innovative energy finance. And so my last point would be for ASEAN to sustain growth trajectory in the long term, the ultimate test is to achieve peace and stability in ASEAN and in the wider region of the Indo-Pacific. And ASEAN's experience of community building and as an anchor of the regional cooperation has brought us together like we do today, is a global asset. So if ASEAN's basic principle of mutual trust and mutual growth and mutual respect can be a key principle for cooperation in wider region of Indo-Pacific. That's a sort of a cornerstone for ASEAN and for this region to continue to grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, I think unfortunately, the time is up and we only have 45 minutes. I'm sure there are so many questions that I would like to pose to all these great panelists, but the time is up. I don't want to summarize our discussion, but let me highlight some of the couple important points. I think we are living in a very uncertain world now, but as we heard from the distinguished panelists, we see that there is some optimism that ASEAN can continue to become the bright spot of the global economy. Yeah, provided that we continue to maintain the so-called the good economic 101, maintaining the governance, and also adapting for the new technology and also improve the institution. With that note, then let me invite to all of you to give the big round of applause to our great panelists. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our dearest moderator, Bapak Hatip Basri, the former Minister of Finance of the Republic of Indonesia, for wonderfully moderating this illuminating session with our wonderful speakers. We'd like to thank our speakers for extending your great knowledge and expertise with all of us. And distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, on to our next session. Please allow me to invite to the stage Mr. Arshad Rashid, the Chair of ASEAN Business Advisory Council, to deliver a briefing on ABAC's programs and their linkages to AIPF and the Indo-Pacific. Let us give Mr. Arshad Rashid the biggest round of applause.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me here. I have only a short time for this briefing session in which I will share my thought based on my ASEAN point of views. ASEAN businesses are observing the dynamics and developments of the Indo-Pacific, where ASEAN is the center of this area. I have traveled to many dialogue partners countries, and they are very much interested in engaging more constructively. There are some thoughts I believe are crucial to align in different sectors in between ASEAN and Indo-Pacific. First, we have massive potentials towards enhancing our digital economy and facilitating cross-border data flow. The Indo-Pacific is the world's fastest growing region for internet adoptions and digital connectivity between people and businesses. Our region has been ambitious in our goals for economic co-creations, encouraging our private sectors to take on a bigger role in the development of our telecommunications infrastructure, maximizing our digital opportunities. Just yesterday, we, the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, or ASEAN BAC, just launched the ASEAN QR Code to build the business ecosystem in supporting the cross-border digital payment. We wish to expand this to more Indo-Pacific countries. Second, we have a growing young and educated population that will enter the workforce with more advanced digital skills. partnered with the initiative taken by Indo-Pacific members to facilitate knowledge and technology exchanges, to drive our future generations holds the necessary skill set and the resources to drive our industry to a new level. Because of our progress, we are well the way towards the more advanced world. The cooperation focusing on human talents is crucial, and the enhancement of social cultural development that put people-oriented solution must be the key. Third, the Indo-Pacific, and especially with ASEAN members, hold some of the world's greatest potentials for renewable clean energy and high-quality carbon credits. Our region is especially susceptible to climate change. However, we have an incredible capacity to contribute to the supply of clean energy solutions such as solar, wind, and geothermal power, as well as contribute to the supply chains of electric vehicles. Our partnership within the Indo-Pacific are significant to our success in transitioning over the green economy. Yesterday, also during the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit Forum, we deeply committed in building the ASEAN Net Zero Hub and Carbon Center of Excellence to bring businesses together in promoting decarbonization and net zero economy. Fourth, our private sectors, especially micro, small, and medium enterprises, are rapidly developing and taking on a bigger role in the regional and global value chains. We have made significant progress over the last few decades in mobilizing the transfer of experiences and expertise to benefit our businesses. The upgrades to our digital infrastructures, fintech, and investment platforms provide small medium enterprises with greater access to resources than they ever had before. MSME must be the priority of cooperations within the Indo-Pacific conversation. We highly appreciate the commitment of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of State-Owned Enterprises for hosting this ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum, meeting businesses and governments to talk about this important region. To continue the conversation, finally, we want to announce the upcoming establishments of the Indo-Pacific Business Network. This new initiative centers around the Indo-Pacific region, encompassing 40 economies, over 4 billion people, and 47.19 trillion US dollars in economy activity. The world's fastest growing region, and in the heart of the Indo-Pacific is ASEAN. Many inspiring and impactful businesses. As a continuation of our initiative for ASEAN this year, I'm excited to announce the establishment of the ASEAN Indo-Pacific Business Network, or AIBN, that is designed for regional connection to amplify growth across. It embraces inclusivity, where businesses of all sizes and industries come together. It is a multi-stakeholder platform that aims to bring policy impact and forge industry partnership, propelling Indo-Pacific economic integration. Let us know if you are very interested in that, but again, appreciate the time given to me to actually have this brief about ASEAN and how ASEAN played a role as the center of growth in Indo-Pacific. With that, thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arshad Rashid, the chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council. Thank you very much for your great insights as well as for your briefing on ABAC programs and the linkages to AIPF as well as Indo-Pacific. And I hope everyone has gained incredible insights from Mr. Arshad Rashid as well as taking notes. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to the next segment of the ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum, I'd like to once again highlight how important our forum is, as our forum serves one of the most notable events for all of us here to highlight as well as gain the most updated and the most accurate information, especially with regards to ASEAN. And as our forum also aims to unlock further opportunities to build better connections between ASEAN countries and the Indo-Pacific. Ladies and gentlemen, and I hope that everyone has gained incredible insights here while mingling with the great companies and the brightest minds around you. And today we're also going to discuss three major issues that is concerning the region. And that is first on the green infrastructure and resilient supply chains. And second, on sustainable and innovative financing. And lastly, third, on digital transformation and creative economy. And we can only tackle these three issues if we come together and highlight the power of collaborations, identify challenges, as well as tangible projects, while highlighting on the power of collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, alone we can only do so much, but together we can move mountains. Together we are an ocean. We are a force to be reckoned with. So ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to our next session, it will be on our next plenary session on a quick glance on three AIPF sub-themes. But before we continue to our next segment, allow us to once again extend our profound gratitude and sincere thanks to everyone for your participation and for your attendance here today. Bapak Ibu sekalian yang kami hormati, terima kasih banyak atas kehadiran dan juga partisipasi Bapak Ibu sekalian di acara hari ini. Dan selanjutnya kita akan mulai ke sesi plenary discussion ketiga. We're going to continue to our next segment, and that is to the next plenary discussion on a quick glance on three AIPF sub-themes. So without further ado, allow me to invite our moderator, the chair of ASEAN and UK Business Council and a member of the House of Lords, the Right Honourable Lord Faizi. Let us give him a big round of applause. Thank you very much, and allow me to invite our esteemed speakers, Ms. Marisa Drew, the CSO of Standard Chartered, as well as Mr. Patrice Kane, the CEO of Thale Group, Mr. Ahmad Mazari, the President of Microsoft Asia, Mr. Abdulaziz Alobaidili, the CEO of Masdar, and Mr. Sunarso, the CEO of BRI. And to our wonderful moderator, I trust that the time and floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope my microphone is working. My name is Ed Faizi. I want to say a huge thank you to the Indonesian Ministry of Foreign Affairs for inviting me to moderate this important panel full of massively distinguished speakers. It's going to be a fantastic discussion and a bit of a future gaze into what the world, ASEAN and Indonesia might look like thanks to the technologies and financing represented on our panel. I'm lucky enough to be the chair of the UK ASEAN Business Council, which is the leading UK-based organisation that seeks to grow trade between Southeast Asia and the UK. And the UK, as you know, is the newest dialogue partner of ASEAN and also has recently joined the CPTPP. And it's been brilliant to be here at the ASEAN Business Investment Summit and now at the Indo-Pacific Forum. Let me just introduce the panel in more detail. Although you're sitting in a slightly different order to what it says on my paper. But let's start. Marisa Drew, the Chief Sustainability Officer of Standard Chartered. Standard Chartered has been in Southeast Asia for 150 years. Not you, Marisa, but you have been a banker for 35 years working in capital markets. Patrice Kane, the Chairman and CEO of Thales Group, which is a French company. So you'll see a little bit of British-French rivalry, but actually Patrice is keen to point out that the UK is the second biggest investment area for Thales, and in many ways is an Anglo-French company. I'm delighted as well to see Ahmed Mazari, who's the president of Microsoft Asia. Microsoft doing some really amazing work in the digital and artificial intelligence space as well. And I'm pleased to say, just to keep bringing it back to Britain, that Ahmed has a house not very far from where I live in London. And then, of course, we've got Abdul Aziz Al-Abadi, the Chief Operating Officer of Mazda, which is a United Arab Emirates government-owned renewable energy company based in Abu Dhabi. I go out to Abu Dhabi and Dubai a lot, and I know a lot about what you are doing in terms of renewable energy, and we're going to talk about that as well. And last, but by no means least, Sunarso, Pak Sunarso, the Chief Executive of Bank Rakyat in Indonesia, one of Indonesia's leading banks, of course, founded more than 125 years ago. Thank you so much, all of you, for being on my panel. The aim of the panel is to discuss the three themes that we've been talking about: sustainable green infrastructure and resilient supply chains, digital transformation and the creative economy, and sustainable and innovative financing. But I hope the discussion will range very widely, and each of our panelists will talk and focus on the things that they are most passionate about. Let me start with Patrice as the Chief Executive of Thales. I'd love to hear a bit about the work that you are doing here in Indonesia, the work that Thales is doing in Asean. We spent quite a lot of time before the panel talking about flying taxis. And really that is a metaphor for the future gazing that Thales is involved in, the future technology that you are implementing.
Thank you. That's a good introduction for this first friendly question. So indeed, we have been present for many years in this country. It probably started with our defense activity a while ago. And what we intend to do is really to not only to bring, I would say, best-in-class defense capabilities, but as well to bring technologies, know-how. We want to participate to the growth of this country by creating high added value jobs here, and defense is a perfect area to do so, as these countries, as many countries, as sovereignty needs, and they want to more and more to do things in Indonesia, not only to buy things from outside. The second aspect in which we have been involved for years now is space. Space is a fascinating field for young engineers or for young people in general. And typically, clearly, Indonesia is made of thousands of islands. And this creates a huge, I would say, a digital divide issue. So the only way to connect all these islands all together and to bring resilience to sea cables, clearly it's satellites. And we have delivered several telecommunication satellites in the recent past. And the last one, which has been launched this summer, is going to connect tens of thousands of schools and hospitals all across the islands so that they'll be able to be connected to the internet world. Now, as you mentioned, we have other, I would say, ambitions for this country, and in particular, regarding the creation of the new capital, where, yes, we can bring some unique technologies, and one of them is how do we manage the traffic of flying taxis, of, let's say, unmanned flying objects. We are a world leader in air traffic management, but UTM, unmanned traffic management, is even, I would say, more complex, because you have potentially many more flying objects than, I would say, commercial aircraft. And here again, we have, I say, some unique solution to enable these new technologies, these new services, to come into life, and that's what we ambition for this new capital.
But that is, I mean, the new capital is a very, very big subject in Indonesia. It's a very, very exciting project. So what you're saying is there is, to coin a phrase, this incredible kind of blue sky thinking about what a modern 21st century city might look like if you have the opportunity, as it were, to build it from the bottom up.
Yeah. But probably we have already started to discuss, again, unique solutions as we start from scratch. One of them is what we call a digital wallet. So how you digitalize your identity. It's already, I would say, in play in some countries. Not everywhere, by the way, also for data privacy reasons. But clearly, this could be the case here in Indonesia, so being a bit in advance compared to other countries. So potentially, you will be able to store in a smartphone your digital identity, the equivalent of your passport, of your ID card. Then you can get access very easily to civil service, to your bank accounts, to your diplomas if you want to get to university. So you could get rid of many paper documents and just use your smartphone to get identified, of course, in a very secure way.
I could tell you were looking for your phone then, just to see if you could hold it up and demonstrate the digital wallet. But that's a very good way of me starting my conversation with Sunarso as the chief executive of Bank Rakyat in Indonesia, which, as I said earlier, established in 1895, one of the oldest Asean banks, and a great supporter of micro and small businesses in Indonesia. So as we move to talk about this whole issue of digital transformation, if you could just set the scene about the kind of business landscape in Indonesia, the fact that there are so many small businesses and the challenges they face and you face as providing banking services for them.
Thank you very much, Edward. This is really interesting because we are just talking about the space and now down to microfinance.
Exactly.
Based on our experience among the three key subthemes, it is clear that the most relevant concern of Bank Rakyat Indonesia, especially in the context of our focus in serving micro and SMEs in Indonesia, especially in the context of our focus in serving micro and SME in Indonesia, revolve around digital transformation and innovative financing. Why? Because we all know that micro and SME is the backbone of Indonesian economy. This segment has over 64.2 million business entities, represent 99.9%, almost 100% of the total business entities in Indonesia. And the most important thing is they employ more than 117 million workers, or 97% of the total labor force is Indonesia. And micro and SME contribute to around 62% of the national economy or GDP. And for your info, that's Indonesian GDP as June 2023 grew 5.17% year on year, which is very, very impressive amid the uncertainty situation that we face today. On particular matter, Bank Rakyat Indonesia is one of the largest banks in Indonesia that has core competence to serve and empower micro and SME. We have been serving micro and SME for more than 120 years through our widespread network that consists of more than 15,000 outlets and 590,000 e-channels such as ATM and also EDC and also cash recycle machine. And also we have more than 100,000 employees who focus on serving this segment. However, serving micro and SME segment is not an easy task. We face high operational costs and also high operational risks due to our extensive infrastructure and human capital to serve them. In response to these challenges, BRI initiated an ongoing transformation journey that we call Revolution since 2015, and that focuses on digital transformation and cultural transformation. Our digital transformation strategy involved two approaches. First, digitizing our internal business process. to streamline process and boost overall efficiency. And the second, creating new business model to create new value, where we explore opportunities to create new revenue stream and value for our stakeholder, primarily our customer. To recap, in BRI perspective, we certainly think that the most relevant key sub-theme in the context of ASEAN and the Indo-Pacific are digital transformation and innovative financing, as BRI is in the strategic position in supporting the national economy and hopefully in ASEAN through focusly serving micro and SME. In terms of what we have done so far and the challenges we have been facing in terms of our digital transformation, I think we can discuss in the next Q&A. And now, time back to you, Edward.
Thank you very much, Sunaso. So what are the challenges you faced in terms of digital transformation? Because there has been an explosion of digital financial services in ASEAN, partly spurred by the pandemic, but also a huge opportunity to provide more services for more people. We talk about digital inclusion, and also reduce the costs of providing services to your customers.
Sorry?
You can reduce the costs of reducing services to your customers.
Yes, I think through digitalization of the internal business process, we can get efficiency in terms of operational costs and also operational risk.
Absolutely. Now, you said at the beginning that we'd gone from space and Patrice talking about satellites down to microfinance, and we're going to go from microfinance to big green finance. Marissa, as the Chief Sustainability Officer of Standard Chartered, but also with huge experience of raising money in capital markets, there's no one better to talk about the sort of financial underpinning of how you achieve this just transition, this green transition. There is a big finance gap between what is needed to be done in terms of the physical green infrastructure and how it's going to be paid for. Give us your perspective and Standard Chartered's perspective on that.
Sure. So I will actually slightly correct your opening comment on Standard Chartered. We're actually 160 years in the region, which we're very proud of. And we have...
I'm never one for detail. Always my undoing.
But what's really important about that is that we are, I think, the only global bank that has a footprint presence in every single one of the ASEAN countries. And how that matters and how that can be important to the mobilization of capital is that we, by virtue of this long history in the region, we deeply understand the cultures of our countries, and we can help but not only allow the market to appreciate the individual cultures, but also the shared ambition like net zero. And we can translate that into the attraction of capital to those global allocators. So that's on the one hand is translating the vision and mission and why it's an investable proposition in the region to those global capital allocators at scale. And the second thing that we can do is be the convener of the capital. So perfect expression of that in this region are the Just Energy Transition Partnerships, where this was born out of COP26, where host governments from the West picked several high-growth developing market countries and partnered up to provide both capital and shared best practice and expertise and lessons learned to help decarbonize at a very holistic and systemic level these countries. And two of the JETP countries so happen to be ASEAN countries, and that's Indonesia and Vietnam. And the role that Standard Chartered has played is in collaboration with partner banks, we've been able to circle matching private sector capital to that is being provided by the host governments. So in the case of Indonesia, 10 billion was committed, led by the US and Japan for the country, and we helped to circle a matching 10 billion. So a total of $20 billion of capital standing by ready to be deployed in the green future of Indonesia. And the same thing again in Vietnam, where we've also played a leading role in convening around 17 billion of capital. So that's a second role we play. A third role that we can play as a bank, and we do play, is to help actually structure the transactions. That's what we do best. We identify the projects, We figure out how to create the structure that will appeal to the market, but we can also identify gaps and crowd in other participants who can be additive to the equation, like concessionary capital that might take certain risks off the table to allow big capital to flow from the private sector. And then finally, I might just touch on innovation. You spoke about financial innovation. I think all of us on this panel have a bit of innovation in our blood somehow. And in the context of financial services, in order to solve climate change and attract the kind of capital that we're talking about and create that commercial proposition, we need new ways of thinking, we need new structures. And a perfect, again, example of that would be the carbon markets. We've been an active player in the idea that you can generate a credit that someone would want to buy, that you can monetize and then help pay for the cost of this transition. And if we apply that very specifically, getting even more innovative, we've taken the concept of the carbon markets and now we're applying them to trickier topics like early decommissioning of coal, which is something that we would like to see happen in the ASEAN region. So what we're helping to structure now is the ability, as you decommission a high carbon emitting sector early, you can create a credit that then you can use to offset perhaps a carbon tax, or you could monetize. And we have been a shareholder and an architect of the CIS alongside other partners in Singapore, which is the carbon exchange, to create transparency, to create a liquid trading market for those credits to be bought and sold. Another application very, very relevant to Indonesia and Southeast Asia, natural capital is such an important component of mitigating climate change. We need healthy oceans, we need strong forests, they sequester carbon, and we need to protect them. Well, we can use financial engineering and financial innovation to think about ways in a private sector, for-profit way to invest in conservation and the natural environment. And that's an early and burgeoning field that we're quite active in. So lots of places, hopefully, that we can make a difference. And one final one, which is in the spirit of collaboration. For us to be able to galvanize this capital at scale, we need really good information, good data. If I'm going to commit to net zero and I'm going to be able to track the emissions that I'm financing, I need to go deep into my countries and my companies and my supply chains and be able to have confidence in those emissions that I'm tracking and reporting on. And I'm going to need partners like Microsoft who are using their data platforms to collaborate with us, in some cases to create things like a common good, a platform that others can use, and in other cases to help us in supply chain finance. We at Standard Chartered are also pioneering the concept of sustainable supply chain financing, where we're very happy to finance SMEs and other smaller companies that are component parts in a supply chain, so long as they commit to becoming more sustainable. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is easily providing data that's affordable and that is robust. So I'm giving you a gallop through some of the things that we're up to.
Yeah, no, it's a very comprehensive view, and you've knitted the panel very well together, although you haven't explained how you're going to finance flying taxis in Indonesia's new capital cities. But I think that
next panel.
it is fascinating because, of course, we forget. We tend to talk about kind of renewable energy. We don't talk about financing the nature, as it were, financing conversation. I think Singapore has a carbon tax, and it's interesting to think about carbon tax. But in terms of the money that you're deploying and ready to deploy, I mean, Indonesia has 118 coal-fired power stations. How realistic is it? I mean, to move at pace to decommission those, can it be driven by sustainable finance?
Certainly. Well, that's exactly what we're working on now. And while we discussed a little bit, I referred to the idea of creating carbon credits as part of decommissioning. That's not the only solution. One of the beauties of the JETPs is that we are attracting concessionary capital that's willing to possibly step in where the private sector has a harder time. And so it's a combination, in the term of art we call blended finance, where you're taking different actors in the same project, structure, or ambition, bringing them together, and they each play a different role to try to create some positive outcomes. So I think a combination of a unique form of capital plus things like the technology around carbon credits can help us get there. But we also need governance to join us, to also say that perhaps we think differently about new coal.
Yeah, you need political leadership.
Absolutely.
I mean, Marissa is desperate to take control of this panel and therefore bring in Ahmed from Microsoft, but I am the convener, so I'm not going to go to Ahmed yet because I want to talk to Abdulaziz from Masdar, who was also listening very keenly to what Marissa had to say for fairly obvious reasons, because you run a company that is a global leader in renewable energy and sustainable development. And I said earlier that having visited Dubai and Abu Dhabi, a bit like Thales, people think about Thales as a defense company. It's much more than that. People think of Dubai and Abu Dhabi as oil and gas. You are actually pioneers in terms of deploying renewable energy, and you're pioneers in ASEAN and in Indonesia in deploying new technologies for renewable energy.
So thank you, first of all, for having me here and making this very important and interesting introduction about the UAE. And certainly the UAE is at the forefront of energy transition through their very ambitious energy strategy, which aim, of course, to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 and cut carbon emissions by 40% by 2030. But companies like us, Masdar, which started in the UAE in 2006, and now become a global player advocating and investing in renewable energy and energy transition solutions, is, I think, a testimony of the UAE's belief and the UAE will to support other nations in decarbonizing their economies and decarbonizing their energy sectors. In Masdar today, we are active in more than 40 countries. We have committed and invested more than $30 billion in renewable energy projects across the globe. Our current energy capacity worldwide is in the range of 20 gigawatts. Yet we are targeting to make this 5 times bigger by 2030. So increasing our capacity from 20 gigawatt to 200 gigawatt in less than 7 years. And that's why you see our teams in different countries are very active and very keen in deploying more projects. Just to give context to the people, when we speak about increasing our capacity to 100 gigawatt by 2030, it means every week we have to develop 200 megawatts. This is bigger than the project we are developing here in Indonesia. And we are very proud to be the developer along our partners here in Indonesia of one of its kind projects here in Indonesia. It is a floating solar projects in the Cirata Dam. This is the largest solar floating projects here in the region. But why it is important? Because it solves for an issue of scarce land. You know, we are in Indonesia here where it's not easy to find land to build solar power plants, which take huge areas, of course. But deploying such a solution where you can build a solar power plant on floating on a dam means will unlock a lot of opportunities for Indonesia, but also for the countries here in ASEAN, and helping them in deploying, again, more renewable energy, in transitioning towards more cleaner energy sectors. And we as Masdar are committed to support all the ASEAN countries in taking the next steps. And we are happy to take risks, as highlighted here, and take it to the next step.
And so what is interesting about this is, first of all, do you find it easy to finance an innovative project like that? I mean, this is, in some respects, I don't want to put off any investors, but by definition, it's a risky project because it's a pioneering project. Is it easy to raise the money for it?
I mean, having partners like
apparently
Standard Chartered, of course.
Marissa just writes the check.
Well, it is not easy, and it will require dialogue between all parties. It is a partnership. It's a private-public partnership, right? Will require from the government entities to change their policies, to provide what we call it a bankable environment or a bankable structure for us as developers to come and risk our equity, for us as developers to invite banks to put and leverage
and it was a compelling project for you, Marissa.
Yeah, we did it.
They do. We work a lot with them, of course. They help us in structuring the projects. They help us in deploying, of course, the fund for the project. So it is not easy, certainly. But once you get the first projects across the line, I think it becomes much easier.
Okay.
Because all the stakeholders get to learn how we can structure a project that tick all the boxes, make everyone have the confidence that this is the right investment, and this is, of course, the right investment for a good cause, but the right investment from legislation perspective, from economical perspective, and so on.
Okay, I want to come back to
Sure.
some of these themes, but I want to talk now to Ahmed Mazari, the president of Microsoft Asia. Obviously, Microsoft doesn't really need an introduction. Everybody knows what Microsoft does. Tell us about the work that you're doing in ASEAN, in Indonesia, in terms of digital transformation, which is the other part of this equation, the move to net zero, but also the move to a digital economy. Microsoft must be front and center of that.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much for the great introduction. Look, I'm trying to perhaps connect dots, and that may be
that's helpful.
Useful for us to do. You accurately pointed out to 180 coal-fired plants here, but equally, there's 120 million hectares of agricultural land here, which has the possibility to generate 28 billion tons of carbon credit. It's back to your point. Now, that would be humanly impossible to map. And so we're actually working with a startup here called Jejek using AI. And they've just started the journey. So they've absorbed about 14.5 million tons of carbon already. They've planted, I think, that I don't get accused of sharing the wrong data.
Marissa will tell you off.
About 10 million trees are in the queue as well. So what we're trying to drive is essentially enable enterprises, micro enterprises, to the point that was made earlier, in helping them have access to better data, have access to more agile data, and be able to do stuff that was, like I said, humanly impossible. How do you map 120 million hectares of agricultural land in the country? The other project that we're doing is in the space of water. And why am I talking about water? You know,
why are you talking about water?
We're talking about water because as a company, we consume a lot of fresh water. Yes. This morning, there was an article in the FT about the fact that semiconductors manufacturers are struggling because of the hottest time in our planet. And the reservoirs in Taiwan are down to levels of 11%. What we're trying to do, so we've got two pledges here. First is, as a company, we have pledged to be water neutral, i.e. we will replenish as much clean water as we consume by 2030. Secondly, we're working with companies in ASEAN and Indonesia to essentially track fresh water and to enable their access to a wider population. So I tried to move away from technology and kind of give you examples of GPUs and CPUs, but rather focus on what we think is making progress in society.
Well, I think what is so interesting about what you said, having said Microsoft needs no introduction, of course, you don't think, I certainly as a consumer don't think of Microsoft as a data company, and you do actually knit the panel together, because as Marissa was saying, it's difficult for her to finance projects unless she has reliable data. You can supply data to Sonaso's clients, the micro businesses that need great data as well. But I want to develop some of the themes that have emerged from all of your remarks. And I want to return to Patrice, because you said something, not in passing, but you said something in your introduction which I found really interesting, which we haven't really talked about at the various events I've been to here, which is about creating high added value jobs. We talk, to a certain extent, some of these themes are quite abstract, you know, the digital economy, sustainable investment. But what we also mean are new jobs for millions of people in ASEAN, but they're high-skilled jobs. What do you think the challenge is to train people and give people the opportunity to work in these new industries?
Well, it really depends on countries we speak. Let's take two extreme examples to illustrate or to try to answer your question. On one hand, you have, I would say, countries like the US, Europe, where we are clearly lacking engineers. And this is becoming a critical resource, if I may say, if we are not able in these countries to produce, quote unquote, more engineers. We will still need, I would say, low added value jobs, if I may say, quote unquote. But clearly the high added value ones, technicians, engineers, researchers, we face a huge, I would say, lack of these kind of resources as of today. At the other extreme, let's take India. India produces, again, quote unquote, between 1 million to 1.5 million engineers per year. It's potentially the largest reservoir in terms of engineers, which is, I would say, able to serve Indian needs or Indian companies, but as well many other tech companies in the world. That's why, by the way, either we rely on India in terms of engineering centers, or we, quote unquote, import, sorry to say so, talents from India to other countries. Now we need to rebalance things. So we need in each and every country to make sure that we produce enough, or we have enough, I would say, engineers, technicians, because we do have many added value jobs to fulfill. So for me, it's not a question of offer. The offering or the offers is there. It's a question really of having the right resources to meet all these required jobs, typically from tech industries.
But this is, I mean, what is the climate in ASEAN in terms of the skills opportunities? Because Ahmed, you must as well, you must be recruiting in Indonesia, in every country Microsoft operates in.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have approximately 35,000 employees across Asia, and our two big centers for software and research development between India and China. But we're equally investing in the skills of the people in the countries we operate in. So it might be a number that might jump out as a big one, but we have educated 21 million Indonesians in the last 3 years through the pandemic. We took a pledge globally of investing in skills because we believe the biggest impediment for progress and societal inclusion that we've spoken about will be skills and infrastructure. And in the skilling program, what we're trying to also connect is skill with jobs. So just in the month of July, we upskilled 950,000 people across the world in AI, of which 20,000 people have had jobs to the point that Patrice just made. The current challenge I think we're seeing as an industry, as somebody who is looking for employees, is the education system hasn't yet evolved to a point of skilling for contemporary needs. And I think that is the biggest change that we have to drive with governments and institutions.
I think it's a really interesting question because it's now a question, I think, in the 21st century of whether the education system can ever keep up with business. And it's long been my view that we need to accept there has to be a business and education partnership because there's no way a traditional school, in my view, can really, the technology that Microsoft uses changes every year, every 2 years, and so on. So it's an extremely difficult circle to square. But I just want to ask as well, Abdulaziz, and also Marissa, the other theme I think that's come out of your remarks is the sort of accumulated experience and knowledge. So I described your floating solar platform as potentially a risky project, but in a sense, this is a real win-win because you're providing advanced renewable technology in Indonesia, and when it works, as I'm sure it will, you will be able to, as it were, export that model around the world. And similarly, Marissa, every deal that Standard Chartered is doing is adding to the experience of financing these sustainable projects. So let's start with you, Abdulaziz, on that point.
First of all, let me assure you that it will work. Yes. In fact, I was on the site yesterday. It's a 3 hours drive from here, and we are just now starting our commissioning and testing to inaugurate the plant and start the commercial operation hopefully next month. So it will work. And certainly there are a lot of learning from such a project and from all the innovative projects which we have deployed across the globe. We invested in the first floating wind farm in the UK, for example. We invested in the first concentrated solar power projects in the UAE in a very dusty sort of region. We now deploying electrical storage batteries in Uzbekistan to support the grid and minimize the investment the government should do in the infrastructure related to the transmission lines and so on. And all of this is, of course, accumulated learning that, one, support those nations to unlock further opportunities, and also support us as a developer, right, to export such solution to other nations where they're facing a similar challenge. It also supports us into going to the next step. So now what is next after the a floating, for example, solution for Indonesia? We started discussing cross-country projects where we generate in one country and we export the electricity and have the offtake happening in other country. And we believe that such solutions will solve, it will be a win-win for different nations, but will solve a lot of challenges that today are obstacles towards energy transition at specific countries. So knowledge is wealth, and a lot of companies struggle to quantify this, right? But it is really what keeping us going forward. Knowledge is what also makes people and our clients confident to work with us and give us further opportunities to deliver new projects.
And Marissa, you're, as it were, you're accumulating knowledge as well in terms of how one finances these projects. And to slightly broaden the point, it's important as well to have a strong regulatory environment here in ASEAN as well to make these investments sustainable.
So, touching on a couple of the last comments that were made. First of all, anytime we are financing a new industry or building an asset class, one always starts small, and the first deal is always very hard. You know, you don't know what you're doing because you've never done it before, and you're working your way through it, and you'll hit hurdles, and you knock them down, and you reach the next one, and you reach the next one. But when you get it over the line, then that is enormously valuable information that you replicate. And you not only replicate it, but you do it bigger next time. And to your skills point, the Chirata project is going to create 800 jobs, 800 new energy jobs. Linking that back to your question
about skills, yeah.
On skills, the inverse of that is the number of people that are employed in the coal industry. So as we seek to decommission coal, we are going to need to retrain those people in those jobs of the future. So we are very mindful as we're providing finance, and we talk about the notion of a just transition. The just bit is ensuring that we are creating these sustainable jobs for the future. So that's always at the back of our mind, thinking, how do we take humans and redeploy them just as we're redeploying capital from brown to green? We're doing the same thing on the job side. Final point I would make is to your question on government participation. The Chirata project is an example. We need to work in close partnership with the government. In some cases, we need to change laws because they don't provide for the type of structure that we need or the type of equity participation. In other cases, it might be facilitating a permitting process so that we can get through the system faster. You know, but these are all the things that you work through as you're working on a project. But the beautiful thing about ASEAN collaboration is not only we talk about replicating it and doing it bigger next time, we talk about using that as a model to bring to another country. And I think that's the power of this collection of countries, because some of the starting points are very similar. Different nuances in each country, but the issues, whether it's coal dependency or what have you, are similar, or topography or those sorts of things. And that's shared value.
Yeah, I'm a politician, and I haven't really brought politics into this discussion. I'm not going to, but it is important to remember, you know, and it's you know, interesting coming from the UK. We have our own issues. You know, the other FT article in the Financial Times today is about the water stress suffered by in the UK. So those of you who visit the UK regularly and see it raining all the time, actually, we have to invest in our infrastructure. And politics does get in the way. There's a vote in our parliament this week on whether to make it easier to build onshore wind farms. And it's a traditional political position in the UK to be opposed to onshore wind farms. So politics always, and your point, Marissa, is a really well-made point, because it's not laziness, as it were, that necessarily keeps 118 coal-fired power stations going, and it's not even necessarily the money it costs to decommission. There are real jobs in those industries, and you've got to make that capital, human capital transition as well. I want to Sunaso whether, if Sunaso is able to just comment on how you see, when Marissa talks about changing laws, the climate for starting small businesses in Indonesia, giving people the opportunity, as it were, to pursue their projects in a digital, in the digital environment you're creating?
I think this question is really relevant to what we have done to ensure wider financial access for underserved population, I think.
Yes.
You mean underserved population?
Yes.
It is very, very huge potential.
Exactly.
Yeah. They used to have limited access to financial services, especially from formal financial institutions. In 2019, ultra-micro segment comprised approximately 65 million micro-business units, of which around 14 million ultra-micro business have not had access to funding at all.
Exactly.
Either from formal or informal sources. Some of the factors that contribute to this situation, including unequal service coverage from the formal financial institution outlet, and the role of financial agent that was not yet optimized to provide financial services. Based on our internal research, ultra-micro customers usually familiar with digital platform, using their gadget, but they have limited knowledge of financial product platform, on financial product beyond saving account due to the low financial literacy. So I think the most important thing is how to increasing the level of literation of financial literation. Yeah. They prefer banking via agent rather than digital banking model and need a financial institution that is locally embedded can gain their trust. That's important. To respond to these challenges, we come up with hybrid bank strategy. So I think we come up with not through suddenly digital, fully digital, because I think everything we can do, I think should be in line with the microfinance journey. So we come up with hybrid bank strategy where combine the strength of our physical presence and digital capabilities. Our branch banking initiative, which involved more than 666,000 brilliant agents, we have brilliant agents, yeah, has generated transaction value of around 1,300 trillion rupiahs annually. And from this transaction, a fee-based income of 1.4 trillion rupiahs annually was generated. And the agent itself received 2 to 3 times the fee-based income as sharing fees. We also have been extending our reach to the underserved population through the formation of ultra-micro holding together with Pegadaian and BNM. Pegadaian is the largest pawn lender in Indonesia. I think the biggest pawn lender in the world, because nothing in the country, nothing pawn lender owned by state, I think, except in Indonesia. While PNM is one of the leaders of the group-based lending, Since the formation of Ultramicro Holding, we have disbursed loan to more than 36.1 million micro and ultramicro business, including 14.7 million underprivileged women who also receive empowerment program. We aim to have an impact on equitable access to finance, especially within the ultramicro segment, contributing to the national financial inclusion target of 90% by 2024. Yeah. We will continue to strengthen our position as one of the largest microfinance in the world, and hopefully can make impact to Asian region as well as to other countries. I think about the regulation, I think we can push together to make maybe certain regulation to support the maybe financial literation, and also to support to strengthen the micro and SME business to support economic growth itself. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I'm not sure how much longer we have, because I was told it's 45 minutes, but our clock says an hour. But I just wanted to use the opportunity of this extra time to ask, as it were, the dinner party question. I'd like to ask each of our panelists. It's obviously about artificial intelligence, which we don't need to worry about, because Ahmed indicated that he's trained thousands of people in how to use artificial intelligence through Microsoft tools. But I want to start actually with Patrice, because he was talking to me about it in the green room before we came on. And running a company like Thales and cybersecurity and so on, and digital identity, I'd love you to give a reflection, which is not necessarily specific to ASEAN or indeed Indonesia, on how artificial intelligence is going to change your business, as it were, in both ends, both in the products you offer and also the threats you're perceiving.
Well, indeed, AI has taken more and more importance in what we do in terms of products and services. Now, if I'm a bit provocative,
yes, that's what we like.
It's not anymore a revolution. It's already there. It poses, I would say, some key technical challenges when you embed AI in safety-critical systems, definitely. It may raise as well ethical questions, for sure. But technologically-wise, not very impressed. Not very impressed. And it's already, again, embarked or embedded in many of our products and solutions. For me, looking ahead, looking a bit further away, the next revolution will come from quantum technologies, what is called the second quantum revolution. The first one occurred 50 years ago. This is the use of lasers or atomic clock, for instance. Now the second quantum revolution is really coming. And if I explain it in simple terms, is how you use, I would say, the properties of the matter at individual particles like photons, atoms, and so on and so forth, typically to measure things in a much more accurate way. Quantum sensors. I'm not talking about quantum computers. We are not involved in this domain. We may use quantum computers when it will be really available for industries. But quantum sensors, for me, is really much more fascinating, as it is probably short-term, and it will allow us to increase the accuracy of sensors by a factor of, let's say, 100 or 1,000.
Well, hold it right there. So I've got to stop going to dinner parties and talking about artificial intelligence. And now when I want to show off, I'm going to talk about quantum sensors. And the first thing anyone at the dinner party is going to say is, well, what is the benefit of accurately measuring something 100,000th more accurately? Give an example.
Cancer.
Ah.
Cancer. You use...
So healthcare.
Yes, you use, I would say, the most advanced generation of MRI. It measures what it measures. Sorry for the sentence. It measures what it measures. Let's imagine that tomorrow you may measure something with 100 more accuracy. So you will detect things that the most advanced MRI cannot detect as of today.
Brilliant.
So you will be able to detect diseases that you just don't know, or diseases far more in advance compared to what you can detect as of today.
Brilliant. Okay, this is not the Patrice show, though, so we're going to get Ahmed a look in, because you were nodding along. Quantum sensors, is that what we should be talking about now, or?
The topics in the program here about financial sustainability, digital opportunity.
I've gone off topic. And what I've gone for is one interesting idea from each of you. So he's set the bar very high with quantum sensors.
Yeah. I want to be more pragmatic here. I think about technology evolution as still a very linear progression. While it might sound as if we've gone through quantum. Quantum is still, a generation out. I wish we could predict it. But I think fundamentally we believe that AI could enable many aspects of life where we have deep capacity challenges in the world.
Yes.
Think about the notion of healthcare.
Absolutely.
275,000 mothers die at childbirth, right? And 2.7 million kids die before the age of 5 weeks. They're not even 5 weeks old. A lot of it is just the fact that our healthcare systems are deficient, they do not have the capacity, and therefore the ability to provide the right progress during the progress of pregnancy, to offer the right medical support. We believe AI will create immense capacity in the healthcare system. I'm not even going to cancer yet. I'm just still talking fundamentally. 5 million children, adults die of malaria. We're still trying to crack the code on how to find the right vaccine. AI could accelerate that. If you look at education, in Africa, the average attendance in schools by teachers is 3.5 days, limited by capacity and distances that people have to travel. Our thought is that we could get into a world where every student could have a bot which is on their phone or their tablet or their laptop. So I think the advantage is, we're still at the initial journey of exploring the possibilities. For it, skilling is important, we spoke about, but equally infrastructure is very critical. So in Indonesia, where we are now, we're bringing in a data center shortly. We announced it in 2021. It has the potential to create 60,000 jobs.
Back to the skills point, yeah.
Back to the skills point. So I think as we look at the journey and the opportunity, we are at this stage doing small proofs of concept. We are exploring opportunities in healthcare, education, creativity, business process, in banking. And we see the possibility of creating more financial inclusion and productivity in the economy. Just in Indonesia, we believe that it could unlock up to 250 billion over the next several years.
250 billion of additional productivity?
Of additional productivity through AI.
Wow, fantastic. Abdulaziz, you've already set the bar quite high with a floating solar farm. Are there any other particular kind of technology that you think is going to be transformative coming along?
Speaking about artificial intelligence in specific, I think it will support us in the operations of such a plant, right? It will allow us to have plants that are more reliable, more resilient. By analyzing data, you could, for example, predict failures ahead of time and then avoid those failures to happen. And that's not specific for the renewable energy, but for all the, I would say, energy technologies. AI certainly will...
You can also monitor energy usage. And so
exactly, you could even understand, forecast your, for example, sun radiation, wind, correlate this with the demand behavior of the consumers and come up with when really I should maximize or when I should sell my electricity, at what tariff should I bid my electricity in a power market, and so on. So data is power, and having the right algorithm that will allow you to utilize it in the right way certainly will make the feasibility of renewable energy even further, even better, I would say.
Marissa, as the person who makes all of this tick by supporting all of these panelists with your financing skills, what's your take either on artificial intelligence or the innovative tech on the way?
Well, maybe they're interlinked because an area that we just today, much like trying to solve cancer, that we really don't fundamentally understand in a robust enough way is interlinkages in the natural environment. So the biodiversity equation, fragile ecosystems, interdependencies. If you have one intervention over here, what does it do for the environment over there? I remember a world wherein the great solution to wean ourselves off fossil fuels was to go to ethanol. And we all jumped into ethanol as our fuel source. Planted corn, which is a monocrop, which supplanted other crops, was disastrous for biodiversity. And we learned from that because we didn't really understand what the downstream effects were going to be. I think with some of this predictive AI, sensor technology will be much better able to understand if you do something over here, what the effects are going to be over there. And we don't have a lot of time because the loss of our natural capital is heading in an alarming pace. And if we can actually understand what are the interventions that in that 80-20 rule are going to make a difference, that would be a pretty exciting place. I do want to sound the note of caution. Maybe that's, given that I work for a regulated entity, around the concerns that I have about AI and where it's headed is a little bit on privacy. As a regulated entity, we have a fiduciary obligation to protect the capital of those who deposit money with us, those whose identities are tied to the capital that we are lending against. And I certainly worry about these advances that can mimic humans and, trick all of our systems and create fake humans and fake bank accounts and all these kinds of things. So that's the one place where, if there's something on my worry list, I think that's where I spend my time on the negative side. But I don't want to end on a negative note because I do think, on balance, I believe firmly in the power of human technology to solve big problems, and I'm sure we'll solve that one too with the great minds on this panel.
Well, of course, we've got the London AI Summit at the beginning of November, where no doubt the Indonesian government will also be represented, where we talk about the guardrails for AI. And Sunarso, you know as well that AI and your work on digital inclusion, financial inclusion, is underpinning everything that supports the Indonesian economy going forward. And you've been very eloquent on the contribution that small businesses make to the Indonesian economy and the huge difference you're making in providing financing for them. But it's been a fantastic panel. Thank you so much for covering a wide and slightly eclectic range of subjects, but which I think do all knit together in this focus on the green energy transition and the use of technology, digital and data to drive the dynamic economy of Indonesia, the dynamic region of ASEAN forward. Thank you as well to our wonderful audience for listening to this brilliant panel. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much to our moderator for wonderfully moderating this illuminating session. And thank you very much to all of our esteemed speakers for sharing the great insights, expertise, and time with all of us. And I hope everyone has gained incredible insights from them. And ladies and gentlemen, as we have come to the end of the first day of our session here today, I'd like to once again, on behalf of our organizers, extend our profound gratitude and sincere thanks to everyone for your participation and for your attendance here today. And as the week is still short, ladies and gentlemen, we will have the second day for us tomorrow, and we will be discussing an array of topics starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning on green infrastructure and resilient supply chain and sustainable and innovative financing and inclusive digital transformation and creative economy. We're going to be talking about an array of topics and present to you the great insights of world leaders and business leaders like today. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, let us give all of us here the biggest round of applause. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow bright and early at 9 a.m. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
state-owned enterprise that focuses on the MSME segment, BRI Digital Innovation continues to be carried out to facilitate customers in providing services to continue to give value to Indonesia.
Selamat sore ASEAN, selamat datang di konferensi pers ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum AIPF langsung dari Pusat Media KTT ASEAN, Jakarta Convention Center. Sesi ini akan menggunakan bahasa Indonesia. Demi kenyamanan rekan media sekalian, kami telah menyediakan alat penerjemah ke bahasa Inggris yang dapat diambil di area pintu masuk. Kami mengundang para rekan media nasional maupun internasional untuk mengikuti konferensi pers ini. Konferensi pers ini dihadiri oleh Wakil Menteri Luar Negeri Bapak Pahala Nugraha Mansuri dan Wakil Menteri BUMN Bapak Rosan Perkasa Ruslani dan akan dimoderatori oleh Bapak Hartio Harkomoyo. Hadirin sekalian, mari kita sambut pembicara dan moderator kita yang terhormat.
Terima kasih Mbak Pembawa acara. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera dan selamat sore. Rekan-rekan media yang berbahagia, pada kesempatan hari ini sangat senang karena kita mendapatkan narasumber untuk nanti menyampaikan, membrief terkait dengan pelaksanaan hari pertama di ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum atau IPF. Sudah hadir bersama saya pada hari ini di sebelah kiri Bapak Wakil Menteri Luar Negeri, Bapak Pahala Nugraha Mansuri, dan di sebelah sana lagi Bapak Duta Besar Rosan Perkasa Ruslani, Wakil Menteri BUMN. Nanti akan ada penjelasan pertama dari Bapak Wamenlu, kemudian akan disampaikan dari Bapak Wakil Menteri BUMN. Kita akan membuka tanya jawab. Bagi yang ingin bertanya menggunakan bahasa Indonesia silakan, tapi kalau misalnya ada media asing yang ingin menggunakan bahasa Inggris kita persilahkan. Ada SIS interpreter, nomor 1 adalah bahasa Indonesia dan nomor 2 nanti bahasa Inggris. Baiklah, tanpa kita memperpanjang, Bapak Wamenlu, kami persilahkan untuk menyampaikan briefing pada kesempatan pertama. Silakan Bapak.
Terus. Baik, terima kasih Pak Yoyo. Selamat sore, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang kami hormati Pak Rosan, Pak Yoyo, kemudian juga tentunya rekan-rekan media semua. Jadi pada hari ini di tanggal 5 September 2023 telah dibuka oleh Bapak Presiden Joko Widodo ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum. ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum adalah merupakan kegiatan yang merupakan bagian daripada flagship event dari KTT ASEAN. Jadi sebagai flagship event tentunya merupakan kegiatan yang tidak terpisahkan dan sangat saling terkait antara KTT ASEAN dengan apa yang dibicarakan di dalam ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum tersebut. Kita namakan ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum ini merupakan implementasi dari ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific. Bahwa ASEAN tentunya merupakan bagian daripada kawasan Indo-Pasifik dan memang yang kita ingin bangun dan ini juga disampaikan oleh Bapak Presiden dalam pembukaan adalah bagaimana melalui AIPF ini kita bisa hadir untuk mengubah apa yang merupakan rivalitas yang ada di Indo-Pasifik menjadi sebuah kerjasama, khususnya dalam hal ini adalah kerjasama dalam bidang ekonomi, sambil juga kita terus-menerus bagaimana kita bisa membangun habit of cooperation dalam sebuah formula yang win-win atau saling menguntungkan dan juga inklusif. Inklusif artinya apa? Inklusif artinya kita tidak ingin ada yang dikucilkan dari negara-negara yang berada di kawasan Indo-Pasifik, tetapi betul-betul melibatkan negara-negara secara keseluruhan yang berada di kawasan Indo-Pasifik ini dan kita harapkan melalui sebuah forum tersebut ini akan bisa meletakkan fondasi yang lebih kuat bagi bagaimana ASEAN bisa melakukan pembangunan ekonomi di masa datang. Nah, kita tahu bahwa Indo-Pasifik adalah merupakan kawasan yang sangat luas, merupakan kawasan yang sekali lagi itu memiliki kontribusi mencapai kurang lebih sekitar 64% dari pertumbuhan ekonomi dunia ini dikontribusikan oleh kawasan Indo-Pasifik. Jadi betul-betul merupakan kawasan yang strategis dan sesuai dengan tema kita di tahun ini adalah bagaimana kita bisa membangun sentralitas dari ASEAN pada saat kita bicara mengenai kawasan Indo-Pasifik tersebut. Dan beliau juga, Pak Jokowi, menyampaikan adanya apresiasi atas dukungan dan juga kontribusi dari negara-negara ASEAN, tetapi juga beyond that, bagaimana kita bisa bekerja sama juga dengan para mitra, sehingga dengan harapan bahwa aktivitas ataupun forum bersama yang saat ini kita laksanakan yaitu AIPF, itu salah satu yang kita lakukan untuk bisa mengkonkretkan adalah mengidentifikasi proyek-proyek atau deliverables yang nantinya diharapkan akan bisa mendukung adanya kerjasama ataupun economic cooperation tersebut. Sudah terkumpul ada 93 proyek kerjasama dengan total nilai mencapai 38,2 billion US dollar. Kemudian juga kita mengidentifikasi ada 73 proyek potensial dengan nilai 17,8 billion US dollar. Nah, kita harapkan bahwa kedepannya proyek ini yang sudah diidentifikasi bisa didorong bersama sehingga betul-betul melalui sebuah kerjasama ini bisa kita bangun bersama sebuah economic cooperation yang lebih baik lagi, dan itu juga yang kita upayakan untuk bisa kita demonstrasikan melalui sebuah showcasing. Jadi AIPF bukan hanya merupakan forum diskusi saja, tapi kita juga berupaya untuk bisa men-showcase proyek-proyek yang memang saat ini sudah kita identifikasi, apakah itu yang sudah dijalankan ataupun yang masih akan potensial untuk bisa kita kembangkan ke depannya melalui adanya booth ataupun showcase tadi. Kita berharap ini untuk bisa menampilkan sebuah wajah di mana ASEAN dan Indo-Pasifik memang berkolaborasi dan juga membangun bersama. Melalui forum diskusi yang kita laksanakan pada hari ini juga hadir beberapa pembicara seperti misalnya tadi hadir dari IMF yang juga menyampaikan bahwa ASEAN merupakan salah satu bright spot daripada perkembangan ekonomi dunia pada saat ini. Di mana ekonomi ASEAN di tahun ini diharapkan akan bisa tumbuh 4,5 sampai dengan 4,6%, dan beliau pun juga menyampaikan bahwa IMF memprediksikan bahwa di tahun depan juga di 2024 juga mungkin akan memiliki tingkat pertumbuhan yang kurang lebih sama. Nah, kuncinya adalah bagaimana di kawasan ASEAN ini memang bisa membangun adanya stabilitas ekonomi dan politik, kemudian juga kita bisa membangun adanya sumber-sumber perekonomian yang baru ke depannya. Nah, ini juga satu hal yang kita upayakan untuk kita bisa bicarakan di dalam AIPF, bagaimana melalui sebuah forum diskusi dan juga melalui proyek-proyek yang akan kita kembangkan. Misalnya ada 4 tema yang akan kita bicarakan, yaitu yang pertama adalah green infrastructure dan juga ketahanan rantai pasok industri yang lebih baik dan juga lebih terintegrasi. Kedua, bagaimana digital ekonomi dan juga creative industry akan bisa menjadi sumber-sumber pertumbuhan baru yang ada di kawasan Asia Tenggara. Dan ketiga, kebutuhan untuk bisa membangun green infrastructure dan juga membangun digital ekonomi tentunya membutuhkan adanya sumber pembiayaan yang sustainable dan juga yang inovatif. 3 hal ini yang memang kita harapkan akan bisa menjadi pilar daripada diskusi yang ada di AIPF. Terakhir yang ingin kami sampaikan juga, selain daripada para pembicara yang mewakili dari sektor korporasi ataupun sektor bisnis, baik itu BUMN ataupun juga pihak swasta, hadir juga para state leaders yang diharapkan juga akan bisa memberikan point of view dan juga policy direction ke depannya, khususnya yang terkait mengenai 3 sektor yang tadi sudah kami sampaikan, termasuk juga Perdana Menteri Australia, Perdana Menteri Jepang, dan juga Perdana Menteri Kanada, yang kita harapkan betul-betul akan bisa memberikan wawasan tambahan dan juga policy direction bagaimana perkembangan ekonomi di kawasan Indo-Pasifik ini bisa dikembangkan ke depannya. Mungkin itu dari kami, Pak Yo. Terima kasih.
Wamenlu Bapak Pahala Nugraha Mansuri. Kesempatan berikutnya kami mohon perkenan Bapak Dubes Rosan Perkasa Ruslani, Wakil Menteri BUMN. Silakan Bapak.
Terima kasih Pak Yoyo. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Pertama-tama terima kasih juga kepada Pak Wamenlu dan juga rekan-rekan media. Tadi Pak Wamenlu, Pak Pahala sudah menyampaikan sebetulnya sangat komprehensif yang dari program IPF ini, maksud tujuannya, dan tentunya saya hanya menambahkan karena dari ASEAN sendiri melihat bahwa ASEAN is the future, makanya temanya juga ASEAN the epicentrum of growth, dan peran dari ASEAN itu sendiri di dalam Indo-Pacific ini sangat-sangat kuat, dan dalam hal ini tentunya bagaimana summit di KTT ASEAN ini juga sangat relevan kepada members atau negara-negara di ASEAN. Oleh sebab itu ini adalah salah satu inisiatif di dalam keketuaan dari Indonesia dan didukung penuh oleh Kementerian BUMN bersama-sama dengan Kementerian Luar Negeri. Bagaimana integrasi antar tidak hanya di level negara tetapi juga di level perusahaan di ASEAN itu menjadi lebih baik dan lebih kuat dalam mereka mencoba berkolaborasi dan bersinergi. Karena kami melihat awalnya bahwa kalau dari segi perdagangan memang keterlibatan antara negara ASEAN ini sudah cukup baik, tapi dalam segi investasi itu dan kolaborasi itu perlu lebih ditingkatkan lagi. Dan oleh sebab itu lahirlah ide dari IPF ini untuk menjadi titik awal di dalam program keketuaan ASEAN oleh Indonesia yang diharapkan dapat dilanjutkan berikutnya ke dalam keketuaan lainnya. Oleh sebab itu kami pun sangat berterima kasih kepada negara-negara ASEAN lainnya, karena tadi sudah disampaikan memang kurang lebih itu ada 93 proyek, kurang lebih nilainya 38,2 miliar dan masih ada 73 proyek potensial senilai 17,8 miliar. Dan di dalam program ini pun di dalam esok harinya selain ada diskusi dan juga beberapa leader talks, tetapi kita juga ada business matching yang akan melibatkan lebih dari 129 perusahaan. 129 perusahaan, dan dalam hal ini dari BUMN kami potensi yang ada yang di dalam business matching itu kurang lebih ada 35 proyek yang ada di dalam BUMN, kemudian ada 4 proyek yang di Bappenas, ini akan kita display besok, dan juga ada 11 proyek yang berasal dari negara-negara ASEAN lainnya. Nah, kami memperkirakan dari business matching itu tambahannya akan terjadi potensi kerjasama senilai 50 miliar dolar. 50 miliar dolar yang terdiri dari BUMN itu sendiri 35 proyek itu 22 miliar dolar. Kemudian dari Bappenas itu 4 proyek nilainya 10 miliar dolar, dan dari proyek yang datang dari 5 negara yaitu Filipina, Thailand, Malaysia, Myanmar, dan Brunei Darussalam itu nilainya 810 juta dolar. Nah, adapun kerjasama itu melibatkan di beberapa sektor. Tadi sudah disampaikan, kalau dari BUMN sendiri memang ini melibatkan ada beberapa perusahaan, termasuk adalah Mind ID, kemudian Pelindo, Krakatau Steel, Bio Farma, PLN, Pupuk Indonesia, Angkasa Pura, dan tentunya Pertamina, ASDP, dan juga Injernih, termasuk Dana Reksa. Jadi kalau kita lihat hampir sebagian besar holding company yang ada BUMN ini akan terlibat di dalam business matching yang diadakan pada esok hari. Tapi kita pun melihat bahwa harapannya mungkin dari saya itu dahulu, nanti kita lanjutkan dengan tanya jawab. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak Dubes. Untuk termin pertama dulu ya, silakan.
Selamat sore Pak, perkenalkan saya Angela dari Bisnis Indonesia, mau bertanya untuk Pak Rosan. Pak, untuk terkait 39 proyek tersebut mungkin bisa disampaikan proyeknya itu apa saja dan sektornya mana saja Pak? Lalu kapan realisasi proyek-proyek tersebut Pak? Dan izin penegasan Pak untuk miliar ini miliar dolar ya Pak? US dollar Pak. Oke baik, terima kasih Pak.
Terima kasih. Pertanyaan kedua, mohon sebutkan nama dan asal media.
Sore Pak, saya Teddy dari liputan6.com. Pertanyaan saya buat Pak Rosan, kan tadi ada 93 proyek dan salah satu fokus utamanya itu adalah infrastruktur hijau. Nah, goals Indonesia ke depan itu apa sih Pak? Apakah infrastruktur hijau ini bisa dikembangkan untuk nantinya di IKN? Itu pertanyaan saya dari inisiasi forum ini. Nah, saya juga mau tanya buat Pak Pahala, mau nyinggung soal isu geopolitik nih Pak. Tadi kan Pak Jokowi sudah singgung soal biar forum ini ada biar tidak ada kesenjangan di negara-negara Indo-Pasifik. Tapi kan kita tahu betul ya Pak, bahwa ada dua kekuatan besar di Indo-Pasifik ini, Cina dan juga AS. Nah, komitmen Indonesia karena sudah membuat inisiatif ini, apa Pak inisiatifnya untuk dua superpower country ini biar juga berkomitmen untuk menjaga semoga tidak ada kesenjangan tadi Pak. Karena kan mereka juga selalu ada pengaruhnya kan di Indo-Pasifik ini. Itu aja, terima kasih.
Terima kasih kepada Mbak Angela dan Mas Teddy. Kesempatan pertama kami minta kepada Pak Dubes Rosan untuk menjawab pertanyaan tadi dari Mbak Angela terkait dengan proyek-proyek yang sudah akan di business matchingkan dan kapan rencananya, serta terkait dengan infrastruktur hijau, apakah ini juga akan diaplikasikan di IKN. Silakan Bapak.
Oke, terima kasih. Memang tadi saya sempat menyinggung sedikit beberapa proyek yang dikerjakan itu sektornya adalah, kalau saya sebut mungkin Main ID ini adalah yang membawa sektor energi, dan salah satu yang ditawarkan adalah pekerjaan aluminium smelter, itu yang ditawarkan dengan nilai kurang lebih 1,8 miliar dolar, jadi 1.8 billion US dollar. Kemudian yang salah satu yang juga signifikan adalah pekerjaan yang berada di bawah Pelindo, itu untuk pembangunan dari benoa yang itu juga sudah berjalan, dan itu juga salah satu yang ditawarkan dan nilainya kurang lebih 4,3 billion US dollar. Kemudian ada pekerjaan Green Hydrogen Project dengan PLN bekerjasama dengan Pupuk Indonesia, itu kurang lebih nilainya 5 billion US dollar. Kemudian ada kerjaan di Pupuk Indonesia sendiri, itu untuk blue ammonia, itu juga kurang lebih 4,8 miliar US dollar. Dan juga ada beberapa kerjaan baik yang di Pertamina, kemudian ada juga di ASDP dan juga di kawasan KEK di Sanur, untuk pengembangan lot kawasan ekonomi khusus. Jadi sebetulnya ada beberapa pekerjaan, termasuk juga di Krakatau Steel, ini kurang lebih mencapai 1 miliar dolar. Itu mungkin ada hanya beberapa yang saya sebutkan, termasuk juga sebetulnya bukan hanya proyek yang baru, tetapi ini juga kita mendapatkan proyek-proyek untuk dilakukan kerjasama atau sinergi, contohnya seperti dengan Jasa Marga untuk pembangunan jalan tol untuk operasional di Nusa Dua, Ngurah Rai dan juga Toll Road, kan jalan itu sudah jadi kita menawarkan untuk bersama juga dengan para investor lainnya. Jadi tidak hanya bekerjasama dengan proyek-proyek baru, tapi juga dengan proyek-proyek yang sudah ada dalam rangka kita mensinergikan itu semua. Jadi itu beberapa proyek dan kita juga menawarkan salah satunya adalah kerjasama pengelolaan di Angkasa Pura I, contohnya untuk bandara di Jogja, itu kita juga terbuka untuk dikelola bersama agar menjadi lebih baik. Dan kita pun juga terbuka untuk kerjasama di perhotelan yang dimiliki oleh Pertamina, Patra Jasa, untuk dikelola bersama, kemudian diinvestasikan bersama kepada teman-teman negara-negara di ASEAN, dan itu juga kita akan paparkan pada saat display pada esok hari. Nah, jadi itu hanya beberapa dari beberapa proyek yang saya sampaikan yang mungkin nilai-nilainya cukup signifikan ke depannya. Yang kedua, mungkin saya menjawab pertanyaan Pak Teddy dari Liputan 6. Infrastruktur hijau ini memang arah yang kita coba lakukan ke depannya. Karena ini menyangkut tidak hanya dari segi environment saja, tetapi juga kita melihat bagaimana financing untuk infrastruktur hijau ini secara global itu sebetulnya sangat-sangat tertarik untuk memberikan pendanaan kepada infrastruktur hijau, dan harapannya memang ini akan terus berlanjut tidak hanya kepada IKN tetapi juga kepada proyek-proyek infrastruktur hijau yang memang sedang dicanangkan oleh beberapa kementerian yang ada di Indonesia pada saat ini. Jadi mungkin itu dulu yang bisa saya sampaikan. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak Dubes. Kepada Pak Wamenlu, kami persilakan dari pertanyaan dari Pak Teddy terkait dengan komitmen Indonesia dalam mengatasi kesenjangan Pak di Indo-Pasifik.
Baik, terima kasih. Jadi tadi yang disampaikan sebetulnya adalah bagaimana kita bisa menekankan bahwa kawasan ini penekanannya adalah kepada kolaborasi dan juga kooperasi. Jadi harapan kita, kalau kita bicara lebih banyak mengenai kolaborasi dan juga kooperasi, maka tensi daripada global ini tentunya akan bisa menurun, Mas. Jadi itu yang merupakan bagian daripada kontribusi kita untuk bisa memastikan bahwa kawasan ini memang betul-betul fokus kepada pengembangan daripada kawasan yang lebih makmur, berkolaborasi, itu yang pertama. Yang kedua, harapan kita adalah kita tidak mengucilkan siapa-siapa. Jadi semua negara yang memang ada di dalam kawasan Indo-Pasifik kita libatkan. Kita minta kepada mereka juga apa-apa yang memang bisa menjadi bagian daripada proyek yang memang betul-betul bisa menjadi bagian dari rantai pasok di kawasan Asia Tenggara. Yang ketiga, kita juga berharap bahwa pada saat tensi yang meningkat ini justru kita melihat bahwa ASEAN akan bisa menjadi bagian daripada rantai pasok yang penting. Karena tadi seperti contoh misalnya untuk industri baru ke depannya adalah merupakan industri ekosistem EV misalnya. Kita melihat bahwa kawasan ASEAN memiliki komponen-komponen yang sebetulnya bisa menjadi bagian yang sangat penting dalam hal memproduksi rantai pasok EV ekosistem ke depannya untuk negara-negara yang ada di kawasan Indo-Pasifik, apakah itu Amerika ataukah itu China ataupun juga negara-negara lainnya. Karena apa? Ya karena tadi secara resources kita memiliki, secara pasar kita juga memiliki. Indonesia misalnya memiliki reserve kurang lebih sekitar 26% dari cadangan nikel dunia. Filipina misalnya mereka memiliki cadangan yang juga sangat signifikan untuk reserve dunia, mungkin nomor 4, nomor 5. Dua negara ini aja di kawasan ASEAN sudah memiliki kontribusi dari sisi critical mineral yang sangat dibutuhkan bagi pengembangan rantai pasok ekosistem EV dunia ke depannya. Belum lagi negara seperti Vietnam, Thailand yang memang selama ini juga mempersiapkan diri untuk bisa melakukan produksi barang-barang yang terkait dengan ekosistem EV ke depannya. Ini yang juga di dalam KTT Summit ini atau di dalam KTT ASEAN ini kita ingin bicarakan bukan hanya di dalam ASEAN saja, tetapi juga dengan para dialog partner. Seperti misalnya KTT ASEAN Plus 3, di mana kita melibatkan negara-negara lain seperti misalnya RRT, Jepang, dan juga Republic of Korea sebagai dialog partner kita untuk sama-sama kita bisa mengembangkan rantai pasok EV ecosystem di kawasan ASEAN ini. Baik itu dari sisi investasi, teknologi, dan juga lain-lain sebagainya. Jadi ini yang memang merupakan kenapa kami sudah sampaikan bahwa apa yang dibicarakan di dalam EIPF ini memang betul-betul bersambut dengan apa yang memang dibahas di dalam KTT ASEAN dan khususnya dalam hal ini terkait dengan salah satu tema KTT ASEAN pada tahun ini yaitu ASEAN sebagai epicentrum of growth tadi. Begitu mungkin dari saya. Terima kasih Pak Yoyo.
Terima kasih Pak Wamen Pahala. Saya memberikan kesempatan termin kedua. Kali ini saya akan di sisi kiri saya. Ada dua-duanya silakan. Sebutkan nama, kemudian dari media mana, dan ditujukan ke siapa.
Selamat sore, nama saya Stefano dari Reuters. Saya ada 3 pertanyaan. Yang pertama untuk Pak Rosan, tadi yang proyek-proyek yang akan ditawarkan itu Pak, itu mencari partner untuk investasi bersama atau funding saja Pak? Kemudian apakah yang besok akan ditawarkan itu sudah ada sebenarnya yang tinggal signing saja gitu, tapi kesepakatan awalnya sudah ada, kalau sudah ada boleh didetailkan Pak. Kemudian mau bertanya mengenai kereta cepat sedikit Pak, apakah kan China Premier League yang ada di sini Pak hadir, nah apakah tanggal 8 September itu beliau akan mencoba kereta cepat dan apakah itu tanggal 8 September launching juga Pak atau hanya Premier League yang dengan pemerintah Indonesia inspeksi saja gitu. Jadi inspeksi saja atau ikut itu launching gitu Pak di tanggal 8 September atau di tanggal lainnya gitu Pak kalau ada detailnya. Terima kasih, itu saja.
Berikutnya silakan.
Selamat sore Bapak di depan. Nama saya Denny dari Jakarta Post. Mau nanya pertama untuk Pak Pahala. Jadi kan tadi kan udah ada task force-nya ya Pak, jadi apakah negara-negara ASEAN semua pihak yang terlibat itu ada semacam komitmen atau target soal spend waktu dari 93 proyek itu, kayak ada batasan atau tidak? Terus mau konfirmasi aja, tadi yang 39 proyek, yang 35 dari BUMN dan 4 dari Bappenas itu apakah masuk ke dalam 93 proyek itu? Habis itu mau pertanyaan selanjutnya untuk Pak Rosan, itu mau nanya soal partner project yang sama BUMN, itu yang dikejar partnernya udah ada yang bisa disebut belum Pak? Dan kayak khususnya untuk yang smelter aluminium. Oh ya satu lagi untuk Pak Pahala, maaf Pak, kayak udah ada dari 93 itu yang udah ada yang paling dekat untuk realisasi atau belum? Kalau udah ada boleh disebutkan atau tidak? Terima kasih.
Baik, terima kasih. Ada 2 pertanyaan dari Pak Stefanus, 3-tiganya untuk Pak Rosan, dan juga 1 pertanyaan dari Mas Denny Jakarta Post untuk Pak Rosan. Tapi karena tadi sudah Pak Rosan duluan, boleh sekarang Pak Pahala dulu ya Pak. Pertanyaan dari Jakarta Post terkait dengan komitmen atau target dari 93 proyek tadi. Dan apakah dari 93 itu termasuk yang tadi 35 dan 4 yang dibahas dalam business matching? Terima kasih Pak.
Jadi sebagian dari apa yang memang sudah masuk di dalam 93 proyek ini juga masuk di dalam apa yang dipresentasikan di dalam program business matching yang tadi juga sudah disebut. Jadi, tapi memang enggak semuanya beririsan. Tetapi ada yang memang masuk di dalam sebagian proyek yang tadi juga disampaikan oleh Pak Rosan akan disampaikan dalam proyek yang akan dipresentasikan dalam business matching meeting tadi. Nah, terkait mengenai task force dan juga komitmen bersama ini, memang ini sudah menjadi bagian daripada komitmen dan juga menjadi lampiran daripada hasil pembahasan yang ada di dalam KTT Summit ini. Jadi harapannya kita, karena memang sudah menjadi komitmen bersama yang juga masuk sebagai annex daripada dokumen outcome kita, moga-moga ini akan memiliki komitmen yang lebih tinggi lagi juga. Sehingga masing-masing negara juga tentunya akan bisa berkomitmen untuk bagaimana memastikan bahwa proyek-proyek ini memang akan bisa diimplementasikan. Memang kita mengkategorikan yang masuk di dalam kenapa ada 93 proyek, kenapa ada yang 73 proyek tadi ya kurang lebih ya, yang masih dalam kategori potensial. Yang 93 proyek ini memang adalah proyek-proyek yang kita review dan kita kurasi, kita diskusikan dengan KL-KL dan juga beberapa negara anggota daripada Asean ini yang memang sudah matang sifatnya. Jadi memang harus sudah matang untuk bisa dikategorikan sebagai 93 proyek yang masuk dalam kategori yang 38 miliar US dollar itu sendiri. Jadi memang harapannya kita karena sudah menjadi bagian daripada komitmen bersama, bagian daripada lampiran ataupun aneks, ini memang proyek-proyek yang memang akan bisa diselenggarakan untuk bisa didorong ke depannya. Memang sampai dengan saat ini tidak ada timeline yang kita masukkan di dalam bagian dari project deliverables yang masuk dalam 93 project tersebut. Gitu. Mungkin itu tambahan dari saya, terima kasih. Tapi mengenai kriteria dan juga ininya, jenis sektornya tadi juga sudah disampaikan oleh Pak Rosan, sedikit tambahan, ya memang yang harus masuk di dalam 4 tema yang kita bicarakan, tetapi juga masuk di sini adalah karena ada juga kita membicarakan mengenai resiliensi daripada rantai pasok industri, juga masuk beberapa proyek yang masuk dalam kategori sebagai proyek-proyek untuk bisa membangun food security. Jadi ini yang memang juga di luar dari green infrastructure, digital dan juga creative economy, juga ada beberapa proyek yang masuk dalam kategori proyek-proyek untuk bisa mengembangkan food security ke depannya. Demikian tambahan dari saya Pak Yo, terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak Hala. Pak Rosan, tadi ada 4 pertanyaan, 3 dari Reuters dan 1 dari Jakpos. Silakan Bapak.
Oke, terima kasih. Saya mungkin mencoba menjawab pertanyaan dari Pak Stefanus dari Reuters. Memang proyek-proyek ini yang kita mau sinergikan itu memang adalah sebagai strategi partner, tapi juga funding. Jadi kita terbuka untuk itu. Memang kalau kita lihat proyek-proyek itu sebetulnya mungkin saya agak lompat sedikit ya. Proyek-proyek itu yang ditawarkan oleh kita ini adalah proyek-proyek yang sudah matang seperti yang disampaikan oleh Pak Pahala. Contohnya aluminium smelter itu yang berada di bawah Antam ya. Itu sudah matang dan siap untuk ditenderkan. Jadi proses tendernya sudah dimulai dan kita mengundang negara-negara ASEAN untuk berpartisipasi gitu. Jadi itu salah satu contohnya dan juga untuk proyek yang di bawah Pelindo seperti Bali Maritime Tourism Hub itu lahannya sudah ada, sudah dibangun dan kita mengundang misalnya untuk mereka investasi di pembangunan marinanya. Jadi plotnya sudah ada, mereka tinggal membawa pengalamannya kemudian untuk berinvestasi di daerah benua itu. Nah, kemudian adapun proyek yang sudah jadi yang kita tawarkan untuk kerjasamakan seperti salah satu saya sempat sampaikan mengenai jalan tol yang ada di Nusa Dua. Kemudian mengenai kereta cepat rencananya memang kalau launchingnya itu 1 Oktober ya, tetapi rencananya untuk dilakukan testing bersama itu sebetulnya besok tanggal 6 September waktunya kurang lebih sore hari. Tentatif waktunya akan ditentukan lebih mendalam lagi. Jadi sebetulnya besok rencananya dari Prime Minister China dan juga bersama-sama dengan Pak Menko yang akan melakukan testing dari kereta api cepat. Besok tanggal 6. Iya betul besok. Kemudian yang saya mau sampaikan juga bahwa dalam hal ini sebetulnya tidak hanya dalam proyek yang kita bicarakan dengan negara-negara ASEAN lainnya, tetapi ada beberapa yang sempat disampaikan oleh Pak Pahala yang kita mempunyai competitive advantage gitu ya. Contohnya seperti ini critical mineral. Kita ada mempunyai abundant resources, tapi Filipina juga mempunyai banyak, dan kita menyuarakan ini salah satunya ke partner kita di Amerika Serikat, di US, dengan mengajukan nanti pada saatnya, karena nanti juga ada Vice Presidennya dari US, dan besok juga akan ada sesi bersama-sama dengan baik dengan Bapak Presiden maupun dengan sesi terbukanya. Dan kita akan propose juga bagaimana negara-negara ASEAN ini bisa menikmati insentif dari pemerintah Amerika melalui program Inflation Reduction Act-nya atau IRA, yang kebetulan kita akan majukan ini melalui inisiatif mereka yang namanya agak mirip. Ini IPEF, mereka IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Itu yang kita akan masukkan. Dan ini sudah kita bicarakan dengan negara-negara ASEAN-nya, dan mereka negara ASEAN lainnya akan membantu untuk menyuarakan yang sama. Karena kebetulan ada 7 negara ASEAN yang masuk di dalam IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, yang rencananya pembahasannya itu akan selesai pada bulan November tahun 2023 ini. Mungkin itu tambahan dari saya, terima kasih.
Baik, terima kasih kepada para narasumber. Sayang sekali bahwa waktu kita memang terbatas, tapi besok kita akan ada kesempatan lagi. Bapak Pahala Mansuri, Wakil Menteri Luar Negeri, Bapak Dubes Rosan Perkasa Ruslani, Wakil Menteri BUMN, terima kasih banyak atas kesempatan, dan terima kasih kepada teman-teman yang telah mendengarkan dan hadir dalam preskon ini. Kita tutup dengan mengucapkan Alhamdulillah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.